Welcome back to the channel. We are jumping in with virtual reality, augmented reality. It's weird, it's odd, it's almost like wearing a kilt to my grandmother's retirement party, which was fun for everyone. It was a little bit breezy, but I want to talk about augmented reality, virtual reality. Where is it now? Where is it going? But it's changed so much, and I think one of the biggest pushes that had made it jump into my head was this idea Facebook came out with the metaverse. We're all going metaverse, like Ready Player One, or the people going around on their little carts in Wall-E. We are now going to experience the world in our offices, which is great for me because I never actually have to leave ever. That's pretty much the best. Gulo, can you start us off? What is the growth? Because you've been in virtual reality, augmented reality for a huge chunk of your career.
So, kilt at an old folks' home, this is totally a glitch in the matrix at this point, I'm curious where the old people smell permeated at this point. But
everywhere.
Virtual reality it's just another interface. We began way back when with cave paintings, and that was an interface for us to remember things, write things down. Stone tablets, paper scrolls, the printing press, eventually newspapers. We walk around now with everyone staring at their phones all the time. They walk around, they'll walk into traffic because they're staring into their phones. We look at computer screens, and virtual reality is just another interface for that. Augmented reality is just another interface for information in your world. And it's the next progression of how do I keep the information with me all the time? Right now it's on our phones and everyone's staring at their phones. Eventually we'll have more of like a heads-up display that has multiple dimensions that allow us to consume information, and it's just another interface to our world, another interface to information.
I think there's two pieces to this, which I think is worth splitting the discussion out. One is the virtual reality like equipment, augmented reality, which lets you interface with things. I think the second one is we'll call it, oh goodness, the realm of possibility of building, like, I don't know, a Second Life 2.0. Like, is that where we're going with it, or is that not really where did VR come from? Like, where did it originate from? What need was it trying to fix?
So first, let's define some terms. So virtual reality is where you're completely immersed into a different reality that is basically technological. You put on a full-on headset. That's all you can see is what's in the headset. That's what your headphones are. You're 100% immersed in it. Augmented reality is where you have glasses, contacts, something where you're looking at your everyday reality, your office, you're walking down the street, whatever, and you're projecting some imitation, some virtual piece of information onto your current reality. That's augmented reality. And then mixed reality is kind of the reverse thing, where you do a video of what you're doing in virtual reality, but you superimpose your physical self doing what's in virtual reality so people can see how you're reacting with your headset and everything around you. But for today's talks, it's mostly going to be virtual reality and augmented reality.
As a comment, the mixed reality, one of the guilty pleasures I have on YouTube is watching people play horror games with the mixed reality and seeing their reaction, especially for people who haven't experienced before, where the face sucker just like, oh gosh, and just seeing them flip out, and it's like the Wiimotes going into the TV screens again.
Oh yeah, the punches that go in, how many TVs have been broken because of it, and just people fall on running into them.
The other thing that's fun, I don't know if any of you folks watch VTubers, but it's people who have facial tracking software, and sometimes they have hand tracking software, which I just realized is a thing. You can wear gloves, and then there's a bar you can put on your desk, and they use this to superimpose themselves onto like 3D generated models. Like there's one, I think her name is Girl DM, that does like a cat girl, and she does streaming like everyone else on Twitch. And I didn't even know this was a category of content on Twitch and YouTube until like the past month or so. And like it makes sense to me, but I didn't realize that the face and the hand tracking was there. And some of the background on this, the reason why we're doing this stream in particular is last week we were trying to come up with a topic, and we were talking about the where we're going with this Web 4.0, if you will, whatever it turns out, or whatever we end up calling it. Where are we going with it? And Gulo and I got into this like adamant debate about how willing people are going to be part of this, cyberverse or metaverse or whatever, in the sense of, I'm gonna wear glasses that do an overlay or a HUD that tell me something about where I'm walking around. And I'm the Luddite in the group. I don't think people are willingly going to put glasses, other than early adopters, the nerds of us, if you will, people like us. I don't think normal people are going to willingly put glasses on that they don't require in their day-to-day life, because I got LASIK to get rid of those because it was something between me and reality. And so we got into this huge debate, and we were like, all right, we got to do this on stream. So I think we're going to end up having, like the VTuber stuff. I think we're going to have like workers that utilize it in their day-to-day, like farmers, but I don't know that like you can walk into a bar and get a HUD update that tells you like the menu at the bar.
Well, something I'll throw out, and I want to hand over to Gulo, because Gulo has one of those devices, is I think I got LASIK as well, but the thing is glasses was a disadvantage. Again, maybe you can look at it different ways, but like it was a disadvantage. I went into the shower. Actually, the nicest part about LASIK, when I went and showered, my glasses wouldn't fog up. I could read the difference between the shampoo and conditioner bottles. Like that was like the most underrated like advancement. But here's the thing: it's like they were a disadvantage. It's almost like I feel like it goes with athletes. So if you're you're an amputee, you're missing a leg, that is it's going to slow your times. In the 100-meter dash, because you're missing a leg, your new model, I don't know the thing you put on your fake leg is not as good as your prosthetic. Thank you. Is not as good as a real leg. Well, what happens when they surpass it? When the prosthetic is better than your leg, when you can run faster, quicker, better? Like, is it an opt-in? Like, we're going into like the cybernetics. Like, what happens if it's an opt-in?
It already is better in many cases. My father has a prosthetic leg, and doing a bunch of research into this, a lot of prostheses, especially for younger people, this is why they're not allowed to compete directly against other athletes in the quote unquote normal Olympics. It's because it's just not an even playing field. And so you compete in games where it is a reasonably even playing field. But the prosthetic feet, for example, may have a bigger spring. And so, it is already a conversation that's being had. Sorry, Gulo, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, it's like, what happens when that's where I think normal people will adopt the technology, is because when the prosthetic is better than it, when glasses aren't a better, when augmented reality and virtual reality is a improvement on the normal life. And Gulo, this is your stream. I need to hear from you.
I don't think this should be my stream. Bad things will happen. But to comment on different things, Gowrie was talking about hand tracking. Leap Motion has been around since like 2013, I think. You can buy this little device. I think they still sell it. You can buy this little device, put it on your desk, and you can move your hand around and actually control your computer. I've used it for mice. I've used it for playing games before. It's actually a really cool device, and it was one of the first ways that I played with virtual reality and getting tracking set up, was just putting this on a headset and then putting this on my hands and having multiple of these. It was really cool device, and it works pretty well. I mean, it's not perfect, but it works pretty well.
It's basically a virtual theremin.
Yeah, it is. It's great. And so to to the point of, I guess the question would be, how real is virtual reality? And way, way, way back in the day when I started in virtual reality, the first time that we did any major demos of virtual reality, the company I worked for was one of the big companies that did basically we made a AAA game in a time where you only had shorts that were, you'd go in virtual reality, you would play a game for 5 or 10 seconds, or maybe up to a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and then you were done with it and moved on. We made a game. First game that we released was like 30 hours long. We completely misread the entire landscape and just knocked it out of the park. But I got in an argument at GDC, the Game Developer Conference, with a psychologist, and he was arguing that virtual reality did not have, no one would be tricked into thinking that they were in virtual reality. And I said, that is not true. The game that I had, that I was a part of, was called Raw Data. And at the time you had guns, you had swords, you had bow and arrow, and basically you shot and killed androids. When you went into the game, you were placed in the center of these consoles, and you were completely surrounded by these consoles. The consoles were virtual. You were in an open space, and all you had was the headset and the headphones on. And it didn't take but 5 or 10 seconds for your brain to realize that everything around you was real. And in this case, my proof of that was if you had the sword and you swung the sword, whenever you hit that console, your hand would stop. There was nothing there preventing you from continuing the motion. Your brain made it real, and it made it real incredibly fast. As Silk was talking about the horror games, when you're playing in the horror games for the mixed reality, your brain is making that real because you're completely immersed in that reality. And because of that, the terror you feel, the panic you feel is real. It's not a virtual emotion that you're having. You're having a real emotion tied back to the reality that you're currently in. And then there's a whole field of study on the psychology of virtual reality. There's what kind of graphics do you have versus the type of mechanics that you do. Basically, the more stress that you're under, the more real it becomes, no matter the level of the graphics. It could be stick figures, but if you're being attacked by stick figures, you're having to react to those. And the more you react, the more your tunnel vision takes place and fight or flight takes. Once that happens, you're now in that reality. That is your reality at that moment.
That's actually really interesting because you're saying, like, again, the strong emotions are which pull you into the game. I wonder if that's why a lot of like the horror games have really just taken over the space, because you're able to just get immersed in them a lot more. Something I've always struggled with, though, is like I get motion sickness really easily. And something we had talked about earlier was that virtual reality, augmented reality is just like one, you have 5 senses. You get sound and vision out of it, but is there move towards like the other senses getting into augmented or virtual reality with these games? Because that's, I feel, where the realism is really going to come in.
Yeah, so you have things like, I've consulted with the 4D movie theaters before, and if you have ever gone to a 4D movie theater, it's basically like a roller coaster, but they also have smells. They have a smell for gas. They have a smell for grass and alcohol, and they have these little scent cartridges that they put in, and it spritzes out the smell into the theater so that you now have your olfactory sense while you're watching a movie. They have winds, like the company I work at now, we have winds for when you're moving really fast. We have fans that turn on so you can feel the wind going against you as you're moving. And since that reality is now your reality, the fan makes it feel like wind. And if you can't hear the fan because you have headphones on, there's no difference between that motion versus another motion. Now, I still get sick in virtual reality. I will get super sick in virtual reality. And it's the difference between, it's the exact reverse of a roller coaster. A roller coaster is your body feels the motion, but your eyes are not changing fast enough with that motion. So you get vertigo and you get sick. In virtual reality, your eyes are detecting motion, but your body is not detecting motion. And it is the difference between what your body feels and what you see is what determines how sick you get or how quickly you get sick. Most people get over it in a couple of weeks. I've been in the industry as a virtual reality engineer for 8 years now. I still get sick in VR. I am one of the few people that doesn't get over it, and I will throw up for hours.
Well, this is probably a good transition though, because we've talked about virtual reality, which is immersive, and we've talked about games with it. I think augmented reality, I'm assuming you don't get that, because augmented reality, how I've seen it, is less on the immersive experience and more as a extra interface to interact with, we'll say, greater levels of detail with a significant amount of information, like exploding an engine and looking at all the different parts and trying to design things. I've even seen like virtual, or this is like now I guess the virtual reality, where you have like 6 different screens, like a matrix screen set up, where then you can use that. I don't know if the resolution has gotten that much, or if you still get like kind of that screen door impact.
They've got 4K and they have 8K headsets, and they've had those for years. And without naming companies, I found most of those to be crap, because they have a high resolution, but there's something called motion to photon. When I make a movement, how long does that movement take to process through everything and show up in my headset? And the consensus of the industry is 20 milliseconds. If I move my hand and it takes more than 20 milliseconds for that motion to reach my headset, people get sick, because they can detect anything above 20 milliseconds and people will start to get sick. But we've got the company I work for now, we're making virtual reality biology classes in colleges. Arizona State University has a biology class where you go and you visit an alien planet and you interact with an alien species, and you need to take their temperature. You need to figure out what plants they're eating. There's a whole litany of things that you actually examine, and you examine it as someone that's out in the field, but you're in virtual reality. And the students that are taking that are improving their grades. I think it was 2-letter grades or something. It was some massive leap for how much information they retain, because they're actually taking care of, I wouldn't say a physical animal, but they're taking care of a virtual animal that's way more interactive than your Neopets from the 90s.
Tamagotchis.
The Tamagotchis. So, and you've got, they have virtual reality for training for medical students, for doctors. They have virtual reality training in war now. NASA's been using virtual reality for, I would say, decades at this point, for training astronauts in different scenarios. And the people that are training in virtual reality, going through these classes and these courses, are retaining far more because they're actually part of what they're learning, rather than someone just telling them something, speaking directions to them.
What's interesting is go on, Gator.
So I was going to say, so when it comes to different people going through and trying to do virtual reality, and you guys know how much I love open source. I like to be able to try to find out if I can go through and run these things on Linux, versus right now, most of the gaming is either standalone with the Quest, or literally you have to hook up to your machine. And that's a very niche group of people, let alone the machine that you have to have has to be pretty heavy duty. Trying to do that on Linux right now is just, it's not there. I wish it was. So then you have to look at not only with, when you're talking about the screen door effect, the having the screen door effect is one deal. Finding out if the fonts are set up to go that way is another. So it's frustrating when you're trying to actually read it. Right now, the current tech is just not quite there. And Gulo has more talk on that than I do. But yeah, go ahead.
What do you think is going to bring it to the next level? Like, what is it? Because I feel like there's 2 places which is driving this, or at least from my perspective. One is the gaming industry and pushing it there. I also think like the Facebook, the metaverse, like moving everything over to this experience. I think that the other piece is augmented with, again, I think COVID has pushed a lot of this, because with augmented reality, you're not going into stores, you're not trying on clothes, you're not trying on sunglasses. And like, well, I think it was Oakley who came up, I saw someone in the comments who had mentioned it, was you could see the glasses on yourself, you can see the clothes on yourself and see how they're fit. Like, I wonder if, is that going to push the industry forward? Like, what's going to make the industry push forward here?
So the industry pushing forward is the adoption rate at this point. Gator mentioned like the Quest. The Quest is a cell phone.
Yep.
If you take apart a Quest or you start playing around with the Quest, it is literally running Android OS on it. It's a slightly different version of Android OS, but it's running Android OS. It's running a cell phone. The issue with virtual reality now, or a couple of years ago, was you had to have $1,000 to $2,000 system to run VR. You had to have physical space in your house to build a play space for you to be in VR. You had to have you had to spend another $1,000 on the VR technology, and then you had to buy all of the applications, all the games and programs on top of it. You were looking at, all said and done, $5,000 to $6,000 of investment for you to actually do VR, and most people don't have that kind of capital. Now, the Quest and Oculus and how they're breaking things out into, it's called outside-in tracking rather than inside-out tracking, inside-out tracking versus outside-in tracking.
So really quick, I want to ask this question because I've heard these terms a lot. Inside out versus outside in. One of them has the little boxes tracking your motion. The other one has like the little cameras which go out. Which is which? And like, can you talk about that for like 30 seconds?
Yeah. So the Vive and the original Oculus, they used outside-in tracking, and what it was is you had boxes. The way the Vive worked is it used infrared. It would flash an LED, and then it flashed the LED, and then your headset would pick up that it saw the LED. Then a laser would paint down, and then a laser would paint horizontally. When the laser painted down, when the headset picked up that vertical scan, it would say, okay, this amount of time has passed. And then it would do a horizontal scan. And then it's like, this amount of time has passed. And since you had two boxes in your room, it became a simple trig problem of where you're at in time and space. Since those boxes were always static, the only thing that could move was your headset. And based on the speed of light and the timing that it was recording would determine where you were at. And that's how that tracking worked. In inside-out tracking, it's where the headset does the tracking for you. It's doing object recognition. It's looking for different things, trying to find them.
Cameras, typically.
Yeah, those are the cameras.
Yep.
So those types of headsets record the information around you, but there's problems with those. The Vive and Oculus were great because they could track your hands. The problem with the inside-out tracking is they can't track your hands. If I'm looking this way and I'm doing something over here, there's nothing to record that motion. It's got IMUs in it that can detect the motion. It can detect how you're actually moving and the force that you're generating, but it can't actually track your hands. So that's one of the issues with those.
IMU, what does IMU stand for?
Oh, that is a good question.
Again, with the acronyms.
Inertial measurement units. It's the thing that's in your phone. So if I drop my phone knows that it's been dropped. It's they use them in they have gyroscopes that they use them. GPS uses them. It's a form of tracking, and a lot of technologies have had them for a long time. We tried adopting them into VR in the beginning, and we found that it doesn't have the precision that we need to actually track motion, but it does have the precision that we need to track motion in an interim state. So if we use the data for the IMU to determine that motion has started, and then we use the actual tracking to determine how far we've actually gone, if that makes sense.
It does.
So let me posit the adoption of this technology in kind of a 3-tier way, right? So I think we all agree that VR for gaming is, maybe it's not quite there, but it's getting there, and people engage in it, and there's a hobbyist scene there, and people who are actively developing for it. I think on the gaming side, and we'll say the online virtual experience side, that is probably going to happen, right? Sitting in front of your computer sitting in a place in your house and experiencing online content, or watching a movie via one of these headsets, or playing a game one of these headsets. That form of adoption of this technology is there. Then I think on the other side, there is this augmented reality out in the open world type of idea where people are going to put glasses on their face and then have some kind of HUD that gives them information. And I think this is where we are versus where people are saying we might get to, I think that's like the way out there. I don't think we're there. And then there's the in between of professionals doing their job. Somebody used the example of, was it BMW having an augmented repair manual with Oakley so that the technicians could have the manual in front of their eyes while they're doing the work. Google Glass is one of the famous ones, which I never quite understood because it was such a small screen. But and there's, how do we adopt those technologies, or the example of having them in the classroom? So I see this as like three tiers. You have the hobbyist scene, you have the gamer scene, the people who are willing to spend money on a novelty, if you will. And then you have the center, which is how do we integrate this type of experience into specific work environments. Last week, when we were talking about this, was an example of farmers going out into their field with a tablet and being able to, have drones out and be able to monitor their crops in a certain way, which I'm sure is already being done in many regards. And having some of that information captured, reported up the cloud and doing analytics on it, or teaching things like that. And then there's the integrated into everyday life cyber metaverse idea, right? Where everything you do has a component of this. And I think the interesting part of this is that for now, and the closest thing we have to that, I think, or the closest company that may be to having a lot of data that will allow them to figure out how to integrate that is, I think, companies like Niantic, who have, Pokemon Go and Egress, who have gone around and basically, crowdsourced the collection of interesting things in real life to create a game that sends you to those interesting things. And I think that's an example of something that's kind of in the gamer sphere, but has percolated its way over into the general populace because it's so accessible, right? And so, go ahead.
There's a couple of things with that. Pokemon Go is a great example of augmented reality. You don't have to have glasses on for augmented reality. You can use your phone. Pokemon Go was one of the most successful augmented reality things ever. And I still know people that play it and ask me about it all the time. Now, you were talking about how it integrates in with life. Yes, you have games, but I also know of museums and walks in Europe that you can take that have QR codes, or based on GPS, you hold up your phone and then you can see the history. You can get descriptions of information around you. And that is all based in augmented reality. Now, whether or not we talk about glasses or contacts or whatever it is at that point in time, anything that I can hold my phone up to and it pulls up information. I can hold up my phone to a mountain range, and based on the angle of the peaks, I can get information of what mountain range that is. Getting directions in my car. The whole reason I started in virtual reality was because honestly, I was trying to build a heads-up display in my car. I wanted to project Google Maps onto my windshield at a proper distance so that my eyes didn't have to refocus back and forth between my phone. And the optics were kicking my ass, figuring out how lenses work and figuring out what the throw needed to be, the bright, all that stuff I was ignorant of. I'm still ignorant of it. It kind of pisses me off. But that's why I started in virtual reality. I quit my job and I worked at a startup, and I was like, cool, you're building your own headsets. I want to know how the lenses work. I want to know how to build my own headset so I can build my heads-up display. But if you go to Japan, a lot of their cars have strips at the top that will actually project the maps that you're actually following. So you get your turn-by-turn directions. Toyota has their TFT display thingy that they have for how fast you're going, your gas, your check engine, all of that information is now projected it's in the dash rather than on the windshield, but it's projected, 15 to 20 feet out, so that when you look down at it, your eyes don't have to adjust their focal length to read that information versus looking back up at the road. And these are all things that are the start of it. And walking into a bar, I now have to scan a QR code. That QR code could just as easily become augmented reality. While I'm in the bar, I have an app. Granted, this is a whole you have to have an entire infrastructure built that has to follow standards for you to do those, which is where the metaverse comes in.
So let
And
me
I think
let me jump in on that one and drive us towards what really sent us down this topic. And it was something that Cameron brought up like half an hour ago, and I didn't want to jump over there that quickly. Is once we have that infrastructure, whoever controls it, it's probably going to be some large corpo, right? Yeah, and we'll get there. We'll get there in a second. Yeah, Gulo is going to control it. He's got it in his back pocket. He's already ahead of the game. He's actually a multi-billion-dollar multinational company that no one knows about and secretly controls the world. I would both be excited by that proposition and terrified. Anyway, so Cameron Batco commented a while back, with the focus on these companies and how they've been using people's data, do you think that this will work if people had nicer control over their own data, or is the functionality worth giving data up? And I think the idea here is, all right, someone controls that infrastructure, or there's a collaborative collective that controls the infrastructure of how all of these things integrate with each other, and your phone becomes the passport into reality. There is a little bit of a dystopian future there, right? Where now someone somewhere tracks every single thing you do. And we're already seeing this in places like China, where they have, what is it, like citizen points or something like that, where you can get rated, which was literally a topic on Black Mirror, or an episode of Black Mirror where people were able to rate each other. And it was this dystopian reality. How likely, and this is the real question, how likely do we think we are to end up in that situation where everything's so vertically integrated and the control is consolidated into one central, or maybe a couple of central big corporations that control this data? How likely are we to end up in a dystopian future where you both cannot do without this technology, much the way you can't do without a normal computer today, but also that technology more or less controls your life?
So I'll jump in, which was, I think it's going to come down to money, like most things do. I think it's going to start with marketing, but just like so many things, is like the companies that grow are the ones who really know their analytics, who have embraced analytics. And at one point, they don't really care that it's Alex doing this thing, or it's Gator doing this thing. It's that it's this number is doing this thing, who is now, they have now shopped on Amazon for jeans. They have now gone into a mall and they're walking past Lucky Brand jeans. Now is the time I want to give them that coupon. Now is that time I want to pop this thing up. And I think when you move towards that, all of a sudden, that's the first step towards interfacing. And part of this goes into another discussion, which is there's always, in any new technology, there's the hardware versus software. If you try, this is like tablets. Go on a quick tangent here. When the iPad first came out, they were like, let's just grab Mac OS X and put it on there. We took other full-blown operating systems and put them on a tablet, but the tablet wasn't the right way to interact with the hardware. And I think we're finding this in VR and augmented reality too, is the software is not catching up. We're trying to take existing software and just port it on over, not realizing we learned something okay, the miles per hour needs to be make it look like it's 20 feet away so your eyes adjust better. Spinning this back is we're still learning how to maximize the software for the experience. And I think once we nail that, it's going to open this foothold for marketing. And that's where all the money pours in, because they go, we can make more money with this technology. How that ties back to your dystopian future, I think it's going to be the people who have this are given bigger discounts, getting better coupons, and that's how they drive more people to use this thing. It makes life easier. This even goes into our earlier conversations, is glasses were a disadvantage. I couldn't tell what the shampoo or the conditioner was, but all of a sudden I have now advantages to having this technology. Does that? What do you think on that, Gulo?
So this is how evil I am, and So you're talking about marketing, and this is entirely dystopian. Just think of Minority Report, walking down the street, having your face scanned, having your eyes scanned, and then having your phone, your headphones, your headset, or even the ads on the TVs only display specific targeted ads towards you based on as you're walking down the street. You could even do this with Tartini tones. So it's in midair, you're hearing something described to you. Tartini tones are heterodyning, that actually describes to you that ad that you're walking down the street. It's talking to you, and you're the only one that can hear it, whether or not you have headphones or in or not. Now, there was a company that approached me with EEG, so doing brain scans. And they said, hey, we would like to partner with you. We think that we could do something with virtual reality with our EEG. I was like, you're going to read my thoughts and we're going to interact? And they're like, yes, exactly that. And there's a couple of different types of EEG, which I didn't know about. And I apologize, I completely forgot their names. But they have EEG for ADA stuff. And the ADA means that they're able to, somebody who has a disability may need to call 911. And they have headsets that they can put on while they're talking with 911, where they're answering prompts by thinking about those prompts. So they may be mute, they may not be able to talk, they may be paraplegic. There's any number of things, but they're able to respond to these prompts, and they're highly accurate. And the company brought in a demo, and they were playing Skyrim using an EEG. It wasn't perfect, it was slow, and it took a little while for it to train to your brain. Now, I went to my bosses at the time and I said, we have to partner with them. We have to build this because I can teach you how to print money with this. If you want to have more money than anyone in the world, it is very, very simple. And they're like, great. How do we do that? Since we're working on the subconscious and the EEG is responding to subconscious cues, you're not necessarily specifically thinking, I need to cast this spell, I need to pull the trigger. You're reacting to something in your environment. I can display ads of like Fruit Loops versus, I don't know, Fruity Pebbles on the screen in under 20 milliseconds. So your subconscious mind picks it up. Your subconscious mind then makes a decision on that. The EEG then reads that decision and then sends that data up to a marketing complex. And that way you can do comparatives between products inside a video game, and no one would know that that was actually happening. You write it out in the terms of service somewhere buried deep in there, so only crazy people would read it. And then you can be like, do you prefer Clorox bleach versus generic bleach? Do you prefer Heinz ketchup versus whatever ketchup, or peanut butters, or I'm just thinking grocery store because I'm hungry. You could do all of these comparisons and get the information back from the users. And companies would pay you truckfuls of money to do that. They'd be like, I want to know what people think about my product. And then you could have you could do comparisons between products. You could do comparisons between what your product looks like. Do you plan on making a brand change? I'm going to change my logo from this to this. Flash that on the screen while somebody's in a game. They make a decision which one they choose without any biases of their actual conscious mind. And then you can start targeting more and more products to people based off of their very specific unknown prejudices.
So
how many of these conversations do you think happened during the invention of the metaverse?
Yeah, right. No, so I want to pick up on something Brett Praxius said, and he said the problem with the dystopian future is the undermining of the dystopian now, because there's already people in chat that are like, wow, this idea of reading the brain, reading the brain's reaction to things and etc. This isn't a novel idea. This actually already exists. If you have, if you have a credit card, or you have like a CVS account, or you have like a Whole Foods account, or you have every single time you utilize one of those accounts, all of those services, Visa, all of, your, I guess Amazon now, because they have Whole Foods, right? They track every single purchase you make throughout the course of your entire life. And they have it attached to your name and who you are. because they're able to match it up with credit cards, right? That's what you are really gaining from using a credit card, is the convenience of a credit card company being able to target you and sell, or sorry, that's what the credit card companies are actually getting from you. Other than the interest, what they're actually getting is the ability to sell tailored data to advertising services to say this is working and this is not. Oh, look, you did a brand change, and over the next 2 months, here's what the transactions say. Sales in the generic Frosted Flakes went up, and sales in the real Frosted Flakes or Kellogg's Frosted Flakes went down, and you made a brand change 2 months ago. You should maybe go look at that and retest it. All of this whole idea already exists, and so when when Gulo says, like, if you want to make truckloads of money and integrate this stuff into those things, totally, 100%. Like, if you can get people to put a brain implant in that does that kind of reaction, not only is that not really like a fanciful dystopian future, that's, I think, exactly where we would end up. Exactly.
So
like, forget the government like spying on you. They just want your money, man.
Yep. Give me that tax dollar. So I completely 100% agree with you, to where this whole subliminal messaging thing has been around for ages. I heard stories of my mom and dad going to the movie theater, and the movie theater banning subliminal messaging because they are putting ads for Cokes in one of the 30 frames that you need for a movie for 1 second. So if you're able to go through and program that, there was also multiple talks on this at DEF CON for years past. It was all the way back when we were at the Rio. I'll have to find the link and then I'll have to tweet it out. But the whole subliminal messaging thing is absolutely there. So whether it's on our phones, in front of our faces when it comes to VR, I prefer to have my electronics on the outside of me. I want to make sure that I can use or replace them. So then I am still in control and not always being shown what I want to have shown or what somebody else wants to have shown. When it comes to that dystopian future, yeah, there's a lot going on there. We're not able to access as much of the data right now. Versus like when we're talking the Minority Report, when we're walking down the hall and people are getting their face scanned or whatnot, or when we're talking about like Damon and Freedom and watching the social scores of people walking down because of their credit scores. Gathering that information and making it more accessible to us as the users or the sheeple who are actually having the data, that's not as accessible right now for us. But to be honest with you, with a couple API hooks and a nice overlay, we absolutely could have that as of right now. It's already there.
The data exists, and the standard person can purchase that data like any other company. You just have to buy the data, and the data is super cheap because there's so much of it. You just have to figure out what you want to buy. Now, as far as dystopian, there are, psychology-wise, there are 3 main ways to brainwash somebody. It's sleep deprivation, nutrition deprivation, and repetitiveness. If I prevent you from sleeping, I continually tell you the same thing over and over and over again, and I'm not giving you the nutrition that you need, then you are going to start to believe whatever it is that I'm telling you eventually. And everyone will eventually crack. It's a matter of time before you crack. Could be days, could be weeks, could be hours, could be minutes. I mean, if you're completely OCD and you can't do something until you agree to something, you may crack in seconds. And that's entirely fine. But if you look at how we do school, how we do work, you are now being bombarded with, I have to go do this, I have to go do this, I have to go do this. The average adult does not get enough sleep during the night. In the US, if you look at the food that we consume, yes, we're getting calories, yes, we're getting some nutrients, but it's almost all processed. And I'm not going to say it's bad for you, but it's not the healthiest option that you could possibly choose. There are lots of healthier options than me going out and eating fruit snacks for 6 hours out of the day. And then advertisements. As long as the advertisements keep giving you the same message over and over and over and over again, you will believe them. It's what the media spouts out. Whatever the media tells you to do, whatever the media tells you to believe is what happens. So you now have Facebooks, you now have Twitters, you have Amazons that are all correlating all of this data. And when they correlate it, they're processing it and saying, how do I convince this person that they need to do X? They need to purchase X. This product is the best product. and they
Right.
figure out ways of passing you those ads, that information, so that you don't necessarily have free will. You don't have free choice. You think you do, but it's tailored to make you think that you do.
So I'm going to
So
flip this
back.
on its head. I don't think that's the dangerous part, because I think controlling large swaths of humans is very difficult. We all eventually regress to the mean, just by nature of that's how people work. Like that's how statistics work. There's an average human being out there. The danger is when you have an extremely vertically integrated company like Amazon controlling many different lines, not just lines of production, but also distribution and virtual storefront. And let's say they get so integrated in collecting and utilizing this data, what it does is it doesn't control your choices in the sense of making you make a certain choice. It reduces your freedom overall because they will produce a very small subset of choices that they want you to engage with, right? This is like child psychology 101. Instead of telling a kid to do something and they refuse, you give them the option of, do you want to do this or that? And it changes the way they look at the problem, and they go, oh, that one seems less bad, so I'll go with that one, right? But it was an illusion of a choice. They were going to do something that you wanted them to do anyway, so you just give them options that produce the desired result. And this is why, I'm going to stray away from politics, but with a company like Amazon, the fear is that's the power that they're going to have, right? There's an excellent book called The Dictator's Handbook, right? And they talk about how Walmart utilized, uh, a methodology that cartels used, which was a creation of a monopsony, where you had this single buyer, not a single seller, which is a monopoly, but a single buyer, where everyone had to sell their products to Walmart to get it onto the store so that people could get access to it. Right. And what that did is it made Walmart capable of looking at the sellers of the products and saying, I need you to make that cheaper or I'm not going to sell it. And then eventually force them to make it so cheap that it put the business out of business, and they were forced to sell their business to Walmart. And then Walmart generalizes the product, and now they have it, and they're making all of the money from it, right? So it reduces consumer choice, and it potentially reduces the quality of everything that we're getting in everyday life. And I think that's the real danger in this, is not necessarily the subliminal messaging or like mind control or anything like that. It's actually, in my opinion, like way more evil, because there's way, way, way more power if you're able to limit the choice and limit the freedom from the get-go and give people the illusion that they have all of that.
With the monopolies, is what you're basically coming down to. With
Or
corpos going through.
oligarchies, or yeah.
I think the
Right.
counter to that, though, is like we are dealing with technology. We're dealing with, we'll call it the internet. And I'll use the analogy as if you give someone two options, what often happens with my 4-year-old is you have this option and your this option. They go, great, here's 4 other options we can also choose from. And I feel like you still have this piece of the internet which is still going to do that, because sure, everyone goes to the mean, but I think you're still going to have like this massive push of like, yeah, cool, we have that option, or we can choose just like not to play the game. Like, isn't this where war games comes back? Like, I'm just choosing not to play the game, Gulo?
So, Gulo, let me go.
Okay, so no. The reason that you think that is because you're a hacker and you're better than others. The standard populace, the standard populace are sheeple. And there are certain aspects of your life where you're a sheeple as well. I'm a sheeple in certain aspects of my life. But we question things. If we're given an answer, or we're given a fork or a spork or whatever, we're going to look at an object and be like, what uses does this have beyond what it's supposed to do? And that's our own hacker mindset. And I'm pretty sure your children, you're imparting that on them, especially if you're a really good father, which I'm pretty sure you are. You're imparting that on them of, if I have this choice or I have this option, what else could there be? What can I do with this? How can I manipulate this? And it doesn't have to be nefarious. It can just be, how can I use X to do Y? And then figuring out those solutions and those problems. Not everyone does that. Most people are like, hold my beer and watch me do what everyone else is doing.
Right. So I completely agree with you. And to that end, when bringing this back to the original topic, which is VR, AR, over the last 2 years, I'm seeing stats online for like the Oculus Quest 2, because it's so much cheaper than all the other VRs that are out there currently. It looks like there was 1.87 million units sold throughout the world in the first quarter of 2021. So it's exploding onto the market. When it comes to the gaming side of the house right now, it's standalone. This is being held by one other very large corpo, and there's nothing else in the ball game. So folks are getting locked into an ecosystem, and I think that's part of the question of, okay, whether we want to go down the cyberverse and how this is going to be controlled one way or another if we're getting involved with this. I mean, not to completely divert from where we were at, but to come back to the original subject, what's your guys' thoughts there? Have you got an Oculus? Are you going to jump in?
So I don't use an Oculus. I have Oculus. I have the original Oculus. I have the old like beta Oculuses that they sent out to developers. I have all kinds of VR hardware. I stopped using Oculus when they decided that I had to tie my Facebook account to my Oculus to use it. I'm like, nope, I'm out. Done. I don't need to use your product.
Same.
The dystopian part of that, crap, I just lost my train of thought. Who builds it first? Whoever builds it first wins. Every
Right.
VR company that I've worked at, that I've interacted with, that had the ability to build the metaverse, the cyberverse, the whatever you want to call it verse, whoever builds it first wins. If Facebook goes out and builds the metaverse and they build APIs and they create a Snow Crash dystopia or a Ready Player One dystopia where everyone can interact, they can buy and sell virtual properties, they can buy and sell virtual clothes and avatars and weapons and whatever else. If they build it to where it's an open API and others can develop on it, they win. Whoever builds the infrastructure first is going to win that lottery, and they're going to control it. And sadly, Facebook is winning with the metaverse because I can't get anyone else to build the damn thing, and I'm too lazy.
But this
So
comes
this
back-
is
Go on,
that's
Gary.
actually exactly what I was going to say, though, is that people saying, oh, my kid will come up with 4 other ways to say, oh, I have this option and this option, how about we do these 4 other things? Right? You're not dealing with a kid, you're actually dealing with you're not even dealing with humans at this point, you're dealing with purely infrastructure, right? Once your phone becomes the passport to everyday life, like you have to have a phone to order something at a bar, you have to have a phone to check out at the supermarket, you have to have a phone. Like right now we're already basically there, where if you don't have a debit or a credit card, that is a form of the same thing. If we get to the point where you have to have a smartphone and you have to have an account in this metaverse to do these things, that creates a situation in which all of this, it's not, so that idea of us saying, well, I can do 4 other choices, was like, not really. You have the illusion of choice, right? It's not that no one's asking you at that point. They're telling you, here are your options. You have no other options. So if you would like to eat, buy a phone so that you can check out from the supermarket or grow your own food, right? So there's a level of convenience there where it breaks, and people are worn down, don't make enough money, and can't be bothered with that. Or another way of saying, ain't nobody got time for that.
I wonder if you're going to get to this point where, like, I remember when you could buy, I don't know if you can still do this, the Amazon Kindle. You could buy a Kindle and you had 2 options. The ad-free option, which costed like $20 more, or the ad version, which you got cheaper. And I'm wondering if you're going to get the exact same thing when it comes to, you need a phone to interact with the world, but it's okay. You can get this free one from this company, which you give a little bit of your privacy up. And I'm curious if you can get the same thing with VR, augmented reality, saying if you opt into this solution, yeah, you lose all your privacy, but you still can interact. I feel like this was another Ready Player One thing. Like there was, you had the better ones or the cheaper ones, but you gave up like all semblance of privacy and control.
This exists in all of it, though. If you look at Spotify and Pandora, or even if you're watching like Prime Videos, you have the option of watching something with ads or listening to something with ads in it. I remember reaching out to companies, going out on field trips for VR stuff and being like, hey, do you want to sponsor this game? We have billboards built into the game that if you're playing the game, you can see those billboards and we can put ads on those billboards. And then Ready Player One, the example from that was something along the lines of, based on our research, we can cover 89% of a user screen with ads before it induces seizures. That's what companies are going to do. They're going to push things as far as they possibly can before it starts to kill off their potential clients. And then even if it kills off their potential clients, it only has to kill off a certain percentage before they'll actually care.
Look at Fox News. Sorry.
I was gonna say. So okay, to that point, if you can go through and say any advertising, back when I was helping with my dad and his business, the advertising school is like, hey, you need to have an ad out in front of people's eyes 7 times before they know your name. If we're watching our YouTubes, if we're watching our Hulus or anything else at this point, how many ads are you getting pushed? It's a freaking lot now. And it doesn't matter if you're paying for a subscription or if you're not. That model is even going away to where advertisements are coming back to all of our content again. And then, I won't broach that subject with LTT. We'll cover that another point in time, because
this is actually kind of funny because my channel got monetized recently, like I think about a month ago, and I was laughing because I was looking at like all the options I get to put like ads on my videos. And it's not like here's pre-roll, post-roll, like mid-roll. It's like these like banner ads inside ads. And there's like 8 different ads. I'm like, I didn't even know I was being shown all of these things. And then like you have to like set up an AdSense like account in order to like tie it together. And even with an AdSense, I was going through like all these different like ads you can input, not even on YouTube, just on your website. And it's like, holy crow, it is like legitimately, you could hide ads a billion different places. And I don't even think we've gotten to like the cusp of the number of places we are going to find to stick ads, especially when it comes to like product. We already have like product placement in movies and product placement in games. It's going to be really interesting when we go back to like what Gula was saying, where they can show 2 boxes of Kellogg's, and then based off of like what you're feeling in the game at that point, going, ooh, that's a piece of advertisement and a data point. Like it's amazing how much data we're going to collect, but it's going to be really hard to make use of all that data, I think.
I don't know. Data is the new mine or the new oil, right? So if they're just collecting it at this point, and the interesting thing about this is that they have been able to collect it, and they can just store it. Because the cool thing is that they can now look at our history and see what we've been interested in the past and bring that up, i.e. keeping everything in Gmail. I mean, like I said, at the beginning of this year, I went through and deleted my last 10 years of data on Google, downloaded all to a local copy, and then said, okay, I'm done. We're out.
Probably because you have to, because they're getting rid of Google Workspace, which I am pissed about. I've had like, for like 20 years, I have had a free G Suite account, and they just told me, they're like, hey, in July it's going away. And it's like, come on. So I have like terabytes of just crap I'm going to have to pull down.
They're the new they're basically a new Microsoft going to the 360 model, right? 365 model. Someone asked the question, how far do you think compliance and regulations would minimize targeted ads? I don't think they will ever minimize. It's just not going to happen. For one, the entire political industry is ads. Like that is the entire industry. Is how do we target you with ads? So there's 0% chance of them ever regulating that, in my opinion. It's just not going to happen.
I completely agree. With to your point, Gallery, is like, it would be really nice because of the different sponsors and the different super PACs and all this other stuff that happens at so many levels. And not going to get political, I'm just going to state, I think that all of our politicians should be like NASCAR and have the sponsored by, and just so we can see who owns the massive amount of whatever body part. And
Yeah,
They
So-
would have, there is not enough surface on all of their body to even remotely cover it. Even at like an inch by inch, there is no way. It is way too much.
So,
so let me ask you a question. Oh, go ahead.
the next, what we're talking about, ads. What you drive down the road and you see billboards, you see flashing blinky signs everywhere, you see all this neon down pretty much every street you go down, any public street. At what point in time, and I think this will eventually happen, is Google Maps, as you're driving down the road, they're going to be like, hey, based on your search history, you're going to like this strip club.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. I'm jumping in here, which is at the beginning of my channel. We're talking about ads at the beginning of my channel. Anyone who has been here for a long time knows that at the start of my channel, I started it with one of my favorite videos, still I think is my favorite video, is the urinal cake hack, where Gulo and Gowrie right now had created a forgery of the DEF CON 27 badge using a urinal cake. It was amazing. But because of this, I said the word urinal cake one too many times and upsetted the algorithm. That combined with then I decided to double down and did like a 2-hour live stream with these two guys, hearing about the entire story, how they met the universe. Yep, there he goes. Gaurie's showing it on the screen. And then, just to double down, I was like, you know what? Since my analytics are already harebrained anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do like some stupid video about a hack the box challenge you can solve on the phone on the toilet. And I used the word poop way too many times. And I have gotten some of the weirdest, like people talk about like, oh, I mentioned I was looking for a waffle maker out near Siri, and all of a sudden now I'm getting advertisements for it. Like, I said the word poop far too many times, and now so many of my analytics are for like toilets and toilet cleaning, and I have like search things that are popping up for like pee desperation. I am so gone when it comes.
Now-
So Gulo, when it comes to driving down the street, so help me, if they use this live stream as a way to give me ads, so help me, I am finding you, I am tracking you down, because I don't even want to know what's about to pop up on the billboard. It will be a terrifying thing. It will be playing with fire. I don't want any of it. Please, I beg of you.
Okay, so we talked about the urinal cakes, and you've mentioned poop. Humans are incredible creatures. We're able to clog a 3-inch pipe of a toilet. It's like become a goal for some people, and I'm trying to figure out a way of incorporating this into VR.
Oh no.
I mean, sitting on the toilet and just relaxing. I'm pretty sure that if you hook like electrodes up to your butt, you could like simulate that feeling.
All right, now I'm almost curious because I wasn't sure we were going with this. I was like, all right, I see. Now we're just integrating our buttholes into the metaverse. When is that showing up?
I mean, they already have the toilet that can identify you by your butthole for whatever heat that you want or the pressure of the water.
I am begging anyone, I am moving us off this, because so help me, if I get some weird advertisement on this page, like, hi, brought to you by Steven's Super Soaking Sucking Services, sucking the scum out of your servers, strong enough to suck a golf ball through a garden hose. If you want to descumify your servers, sign up now. My gosh, I cannot imagine the sponsors.
No, there is actually CryptoCat posted something. So there's been a few scandals from advertising, and one of the big ones that I always reference is an old one, and it was about a father that sent a very nasty letter to, I believe it was Target, because his daughter started to receive coupons for like prenatal vitamins, diaper, a whole bunch of pregnancy related things, his underage daughter. And they determined that she was pregnant based on her shopping habits at Target. And they started sending her very, very targeted ads. And then Target during that case was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, people shouldn't realize that we know that they're pregnant. They shouldn't realize that we know this type of information about them based on the ads. So they only started to slip in, they changed their policy to where they would only slip in very specific ads into a greater scheme of ads. So it didn't ever look like it was completely targeted, but you still got the information that you needed or the coupons that you needed.
So Blank Dash went down this route. He said, in a revelation from Facebook engineers, we've seen that targeted ads are not only targeted, but mentally pushing users to a specific scenario to push ads, like causing mental depression and selling pills. So if they can cause depression, they can sell, antidepressants. And this is one of the things that I think is tacitly talked about, but not really said in strong words, where companies like Facebook that are trying to approach this type of system are going to be given the power to run effectively mass unregulated social experiments, right? And we are not only are they given the ability to do this, they have it now because we know that they have had these effects, and that they did things like, oh, what happens to our numbers when we prioritize angry react posts? That is a social experiment, and running that experiment is incredible, like without actual design and worrying about the health and safety of people. It's just, it's unethical, right? So when do we apply ethical regulations to companies that are going to be highly integrated into this type of future reality?
Well, and
So,
something I'll add to this though, and then I'll hand it off, is like I think there's by design, we're going to do this, and then there's just like the algorithmic issue that comes from this. Like YouTube, Google Analytics, Facebook advertisements. Like it's not a person looking at this number going, oh, they did this, therefore they get this ad. It's all programmatic. And what I think which is kind of terrifying is when you find these, showing them these angry videos, like just so happens to make them feel depressed. So they're starting to look at this. So we give them, the pill advertisements. Like that happens through an algorithm. What's terrifying is what is the company's decision when they realize this pattern is making this happen and it's making us money? Do we double down on this? Like, do we invest in this algorithm to continue this because it's making us money? Gulo?
That's the whole crux of all of this. As Gowrie said earlier, so you're talking about making an ethics board. It's not going to happen. Yep. It's an advertisement. It will never happen because it's going to demonetize. It's going to pull away money from a company. And there's not going to be any politicians. There's not going to be anyone who's going to stand up and do this. And this comes back to Ready Player One. I like the book. I'm not like a super huge fan, but I really like the book. I like the movies. Ready Player One, Facebook is the Sixers. They are building the metaverse. They are building the infrastructure that they are going to control. This is not an altruistic company. This is not somebody who's ethical. This is somebody who's out there to take control of a large section of our future and build it and make sure that they are the only ones that can control it. And this is an incredibly bad thing. And as a society, as a technologist, as a nerd, we need to figure out a way to keep them from doing it. We either need to build it ourselves, we need to burn them down, pitchforks and I don't know. There has to be something that we can do to step up before they rule everything, because they are going to rule it, and it's not going to be good.
So to your point, Thrill Seeker on YouTube is big into VR, made his channel, blah, blah, blah. I like the channel. He's had also the same issue on, hey, do we get integrated with Facebook? Because if they're the only ones that are building it right now, he doesn't want to support Facebook. He suggests something else. The price point has been brought down so low that people can go through and buy it fairly inexpensively compared to the $1,000 to get started. His argument is if we don't start influencing it now by getting involved, they're going to continue to run uncontrolled. So it's are we going to be the old men yelling at the cloud, or are we going to embrace the technology and help try to adjust it and drive what we should getting involved by saying, okay, we want privacy rights. How can we go through and see what data is being tracked? And then be able to go press this against Facebook, Meta, or whatever else you want to call it this week, whether it's that corpo or another one. So while I still have my Quest 1, I have not ever hooked it up to Facebook. I'm seriously considering a Quest 2, because if this is the next generation of where things are going, is it time to get involved to make sure I can not only know what's coming, but also try to make adjustments and put my 2 cents worth in on putting controls in place? What's your guys' thoughts?
I'm a VR engineer. I'm not part of the metaverse. I've never signed on to the metaverse. I've never linked my Oculuses to Facebook. In fact, they're just sitting in boxes in my closet. I have no desire to join those things because I do not want to support them. And as a hacker, as a technologist, and a general intelligent human being, there's nothing that I can do if I join the metaverse to make the metaverse better. The only way for me to make an impact on the metaverse would be if I took a job at Facebook and took a job in their VR and tried to make changes from there. I don't see regulations ever stepping up to do what they need to do to protect us. We do have some privacy laws, but most people ignore those. When you get fined $4 million and you're a, I don't know, $100 billion company, who cares? It's not even a drop in the bucket. It doesn't, there are no consequences for their actions, and they're going to continue and they're going to get worse.
I think a good one to wrap on is, what are your thoughts? So someone said in chat, what are your thoughts on, say, 20 years from now? Will companies be able to legally spy on us this way? I feel like users' ignorance is going away, but also there's so much money on this. I'm not sure how, like, this 20 years from now is a long time within technology, like a long time. I think the other thing is, like, I think that, I would say spy on us like this tracking is already done. I think the kicker is how well are they going to be able to make use of the information? Like, I'll use the example of Amazon still messes up, like around Christmas time, you're buying gifts. Their analytics get thrown off because they need to figure out, like, was this buying it for himself? Was it buying it for a gift? And they're getting better at that. Like, they already have the analytics of my entire purchases for my life. They know when I had kids, like all of these events, but they haven't figured out a way of capitalizing on it. I think them spying on us, they don't care about what I do in my house unless it comes down to what else can I sell him? What else does he need? I think the terrifying thing with what we've discussed is when those algorithmic things happen, like if we show angry videos, it gets the person depressed, and then if we sell them pills, like those weird analytical events, what happens when the company wants to double down on those because they see a profit strain? Or do they go, okay, this is highly unethical, we don't want to do this? And they have a lot of power to change, especially in this period where we're all like it's separated. We'll say COVID, bunker in place type of thing. Like, I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. With that, though, I do want to have closing thoughts. Gowrie?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, and the thing, though, is that we keep talking about ethics boards as if they are not subject to the almighty dollar, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. Like, ultimately, they're part of the company. They are unelected positions that represent the company first and everyone else second. And so that's the dystopian portion of this is, you know, we often like to think the democratization of everything is better, but we're actually trending in the opposite, where everything is becoming privatized and power is being given to a small number of individuals.
When this also falls into security too, that my Bluetooth coffee mug I always joke about is it's great. I love this mug. But whoever does the security in the Bluetooth of the thing, their job is to sell more coffee mugs. It's not to secure the thing. It's to sell more coffee mugs. And the ethic board, they're there to give the appearance of whatever it is, but their goal, if there's an ethics board for this coffee mug, is to sell more coffee mugs. Their job is the same as everyone else's.
I think that we also have another problem, and it comes back to interface. I interface on my phone. I can go to Amazon. I interface on my computer. I can go to Amazon. I can make those purchases, and it's something physical that I'm doing. It's something that I know that I'm doing. But going back to the EEG I was talking about earlier, Vive is already out there trying to build an EEG that actually works with VR. They're taking what I was working on a few years ago and they're pushing it forward, whether or not they do it from advertisements. But once you start controlling things with your mind and your subconscious has control over that as well, you're now making decisions that you don't know about, where they're able to collect that information. They're able to track you based off of that. And to me, it's going to become the Salem witch trials. I don't think normally like most people think. And there's going to be a point in time where people like me are most likely going to be shunned in a dystopian future because the way my mind works. Actually, wasn't there a book about this where they made implants that caused noise or pain or something every 10 seconds for somebody who had an IQ over like 120?
That was a short poem that somebody just brought up literally the other day at work.
Yeah. And something along those lines, that's going to be the control that they're going to have to start to implement, because free thinkers are a danger to society, to capitalism, to just in general the infrastructure they're building.
With that, man, we're all over the place. I want to end on a happier note. I don't know where it is. Like, everything's doomed. We're all going to get, was it, as Gowrie says, abandon computers, return to monkey. Gator, can you start us with a round? What's your parting thoughts, especially when it comes to VR? We've talked about advertisements, but I'll end it with, where do you think we're going? Where would you want it to go? That's probably a good one. Where do you want it to go?
I want it to be a benefit to not just me, but my kids. And looking at it long-term wise, because I have offspring, the technology I'm excited about, I wanted to see it improve people's lives, because I've got a kiddo with special needs. I could see where an EEG could be absolutely amazing for the speech impaired. I could see where being able to interact with the different things, if you have either prosthetics or are in the process of trying to get those, there is a lot of potential for good, but there is the bigger looming issue with how the data is being used right now. So I would say, where is it going? It's moving forward with us or not. So I would rather not be yelling old man at cloud and understand what's going on to see how we can best utilize it. And with that, hey, you got to love your hacker family. Pass that over to Gowrie.
Yeah, I mean, I think put very simply, the direction I would like to see this going is, I think by and large, I don't want to be a Luddite, I think some form of this system is inevitable, right? Where things are going to get integrated in that way, where your phone is more or less going to be your passport even to brick and mortar businesses. It's gonna get to some form of that. Is it going to look exactly like that? I don't know. But I think it starts with data rights, right? Like, we need to have better control over our individual data and how it sells, and how others can sell it, in much the way that the European Union is going. I do not think the United States has this one right. I think they have it exactly wrong. Maybe not as wrong as countries like China, but I think we are way, way, way behind on these rights for individuals. And I mean, I think there's hope. I think there are people who are seeing the issue and pushing the issue, and I don't think we're going to get there fast, but I think we're going to get there, and hopefully we get there before Facebook takes over the world. Gulo.
VR porn gives me dopamine.
There's the demonetization right at the end of the stream. So it was good. There's a good conversation. I think I agree. I think the idea of individual data rights, what they do with their data, I don't think the battle's lost yet. I think we're right on the cusp of finally recognizing the value of my data, my purchase history, and then that company's ability to just resell that data. I don't think everything is lost yet. I don't think we have to abandon computers and return to monkey. I do think we need to continue learning, continue our passions, and hack on.